So on the first day of Unit 2, I want to review what the pieces of a method are. It's not super important that you understand in detail how to write them, but you should have a very, very broad overview of how to write them. The really big thing I want you to be able to do is I want you to identify the pieces of a method, and we'll start understanding them a little bit more as the unit progresses. So the first card that you need to write out if you're writing out cards, which I hope you are, is method. And a method is defined as a subprogram, and we're going to break a program up. So if you think of it as a method is like a single little Lego block, like a single specific function, and then what you're going to do is you put those little methods together to build up your program. So an example we saw last year in grade 11 is that we saw an example of a main method, a constructor, and then the two big ones that I want you to focus on are the circle method and the area method at the bottom there. Those are custom written methods that we developed ourselves last year. This year, when we're working in Android Studio, we've also had methods already. We've already seen the onCreate method, which we're not supposed to touch. And then we started to build some of our own methods. We've had some view kind of methods that we looked at before that we built from our onClicks. This particular one isn't one like that. It's a flip method as well. And I've done something slightly different that we'll look at in more detail. So our first big term is method signature, and the method signature is the very first line of the method, and it's basically a big deal because it defines everything critical. It defines the input, defines the output, defines the parameters, defines the method name, and it lays everything out in one convenient location. It's very critical that you learn to read that line and interpret it very quickly. So in our examples from last year, the very first line of the method, and the first one is, it says public void circle with brackets. And that whole line is the method signature. And in the second method here, we have public double area int radius. And that whole line is the method signature. And the examples that I'm going to show you from AppLab, so we've already seen the flip method a little bit. So it's here public void flip image view. And then we have public void aclick view view. So just to show you what the heck that's coming from, I've got in my Android emulator, or sorry, in Android Studio, I've got a method here where I've got a program here where I've got the methods that I'm describing to you, and my emulator will show how it works. So it's a tic-tac-toe game. So the current turn is an X. So if I click here, the X goes. I'll make the yellow duck be kind of stupid, and the X will go here, and the yellow duck has no idea what X's plan is. So there we go. So the scissors won there. And so that's what we're doing here. So we have A-click is going with the A spot here. There's a B-click method in the code as well, C-click, and so on for the other places. And the flip method is when I click on something, I want it to flip to either be the scissors or the duck. And so that's kind of the background of the program we're doing. That's one of the programs you can work on this unit. So to go back here, we've got our method signature up here. We've got the public void flip, and we've got the public void A flip. Now, the name is always found in the position right here. So it's always something, something, method name. Something, something, method name. Always. And that's always the position. And that is what we're going to be calling it throughout our program. The method names must be unique. Parameters are the next thing I'd like to talk about, and those are the variables that are going to be sent into the method. They are the input of the method. A parameter is a variable, so it needs a type. And the types are going to get a bit more complicated, you will see when we're working on this. A type can also be a view type, so it could be a text view or an image view, you'll see. As well, it needs to have a name, and the name is going to follow the ID naming rules that we're very used to. So it can't have a number at the beginning, can't have a special character, can't have spaces, can't have a capital because it's an ID, those sorts of things. So if we're looking at each method signature to find the parameters, we need to look inside the brackets. So public void circle, nothing in the brackets, so it has no parameters, no input comes in. Public void or public double area input radius, however, has something in its brackets, so it has a radius coming in. If we take a look at our Android Studio examples, inside the flip method on this first line, I is coming in. And inside our A-click, a view is coming in, which I hope indicates to you that this is a buttons on click. And the little v view is the name of the parameter. We look at the parameter type, it's found in the same location. So again, the circle has no parameters, so it has no parameter type. But if you look at area down here, right here, it has an int as the type for radius. And if you look at our parameter types in the examples from Android Studio, you see we have some quite complicated parameter types Now, they don't have to be. They could be, if that's what I wanted, a double or an int or a char or whatever. But we are also going to extend it a little this year to include more complicated types coming in. So right here we have an image view coming in. So we're going to be doing something to a picture. And in fact, we're going to be flipping the picture between these two. And down here we have a view, a capital V view for the type. Now, the return type is the output of the method, and it's a value that's going to be sent back. And there'll be a line of code inside our method that has return in it that will be the spot where I send it back. And let's take a look at that. So it's always in the something blank. That's where the spot where the return type comes. So in this case, it's void, which means nothing gets returned. In the second one, however, area, we have public double. And that means that a double will be returned. So the value that gets sent down will be a double. You can see if you read a bit further down, it goes double area, math, pi, radius, blah, blah, blah. So there's clearly a double going on there. And then when I finally return something, I'm returning area, which was a double, which means that I have fulfilled what I stated I would do in my method signature. Both the examples I've picked for you from Android Studio are voids. We'll do a fair bit with voids. We'll start playing around with some win methods in a few days where we'll play around with a Boolean there. So your return type could be an image view, but it could also be a Boolean or a double or an int or a char. If we take a look at the return line, the example of a return line is found here. We've already talked about it a little bit. So it's the line with the return in it. And there aren't any return lines in the ones that we've got for Android Studio because I didn't have any return types, I just had void. So if we take a look back at the grade 11 example, there's some examples of some method calls up here. So there's one right here. So I called my circle method and then it would run it. And then right over here I called my area method and it would run it. And here I've called the circle method. So what the output would look like is first it would run the circle. Then it would say, hey, what's the radius? And we would type in 6. And then it would go, the area is, and it would go calculate the area method, find out what the answer is, pass in the radius, get back the answer, and display that on the screen. And then it would display our last circle. If this process is a little unclear, don't worry, we're going to go over it a lot more times, but I wanted you to see it once. I'm hoping that you can know identify method names and parameters and things like that at this stage. So there we go. We've got some method calls outlined there. There is some method calls already in the code here. I don't know if you noticed it. There's a little, I called flip method right here. So if my board space didn't have anything in it, I called flip to place a piece and flip the turn. So that's what's happening there in that method. And I passed in I for the position I was in. All right, so take a look at your worksheet. If you get overly stuck, I can always look at it with you tomorrow, and please try to progress through as much of your code as you can. See you tomorrow.